I didn't cry at my father's funeral. Not because I wasn't grieving, but because I already knew what was coming. The whispered conversations between the service and the reception. The awkward silence when I asked where the will was being read. The look on my brother Tom's face when he said, "Let's talk tomorrow." We sat in Dad's old study the next day. The place still smelled like his aftershave and cedarwood. Tom slid the papers across the desk like it was a business deal. "Not a betrayal." "I know this is a shock," he said, not meeting my eyes. "But Dad wanted me to have the estate. Said I'd know what to do with it." I stared at the signature. It was real. My name wasn't on anything. Not the house. Not the land. Not the savings. Not even the toolbox I'd used to fix the porch every spring for 20 years. Tom smiled, gentle, like he was doing me a favor. "You get it, right? You were here for Dad. But he needed someone who could take care of the assets. You're not that kind of person." I nodded slowly. And then I left. No shouting. No arguing. Just the smallest smile. Because Tom had forgotten something. I never threw things away. Not notes. Not receipts. And certainly not the original will. The house sat on 4 acres at the edge of town. White siding, green shutters, a wraparound porch my mother always said made it feel like a storybook. She died when I was 29. I moved back in 6 months later. Dad hadn't asked. He never would. But I saw it on his face, the silence eating him alive. I told myself it would just be for a while. Just until he found his rhythm again. Just until the grief softened around the edges. That while lasted 17 years. I fixed everything. The roof. The furnace. The irrigation line that collapsed under a February freeze. I made sure his prescriptions were filled. Took him to every appointment. Made sure he ate even when he said he wasn't hungry. Every Christmas, I bought the tree. Every summer, I repainted the porch. Every fall, I cleaned the gutters. Every spring, I planted marigolds in Mom's old flower beds because he said they reminded him of her. And through it all, Tom stayed gone. Finance jobs in Chicago. Then L.A. Then somewhere overseas. The occasional holiday visit, where he arrived with new cufflinks and the smell of expensive aftershave, complaining about airport lounges and jet lag. Dad never asked him for help. Never wanted to burden him. So he saved the burden for me. I never complained. Not once. Even when I missed weddings. Vacations. A life of my own. Even when I watched Dad's friends retire and travel and finally breathe, and I was still here, checking blood pressure logs and buying low-sodium soup. We had a rhythm, Dad and I, Sundays on the porch. Chess games that lasted days. Stories about Mom I'd heard 100 times, but always let him tell again. And then one October morning, he sat across from me at breakfast and said, "We should talk about the will." I remember the sun catching his thinning hair. The way he stirred his coffee 5 times, even though he hadn't taken sugar in years. "I want you to have the house, David. You've earned it." I told him not to worry. That there was time. He looked at me and said, "Time has a way of surprising you when you think you have more of it." 3 weeks later, the hospital called. Pneumonia. Complications. 1 week in the ICU. No time to prepare. Tom flew in the day after he died. He hugged me too long. Asked questions that felt more like statements. Did he leave a note? Was there a safe? Any files I should know about? I handed him the will Dad had signed with me and our family attorney last spring. But he shook his head. Said it was outdated. Said Dad had made some adjustments. Turns out, he'd brought a new will. Dated 10 days before Dad passed. Signed by a notary who'd flown in, just for the day. That was when I knew. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a theft. Of my father's memory. Of his intentions. Of everything I'd sacrificed. But I said nothing. Because I still had something Tom didn't know existed. The original will, signed, notarized, and safely tucked in a sealed envelope under the floorboard of Dad's study. The one that left everything to me. The final straw wasn't the will. It was the plaque. I returned to the house a week after the funeral to pick up some tools I'd left in the shed. The air still carried the scent of Dad's pipe tobacco. The porch creaked the way it always had. But when I turned the corner, I stopped cold. A brass plaque had been screwed into the side of the house. Harrison Estate, established 2023. Tom and Jenna Harrison. Jenna. His fiancée. She'd only been around for a year. Her name was on the plaque. Not mine. Not our mother's. Not even Dad's. I stood there for a full minute, blinking at it. The audacity. The erasure. I walked inside without knocking. They were redecorating. Paint swatches covered the walls. The curtains were gone. A crew was installing recessed lighting in the kitchen, replacing the yellow glass fixtures my mother had picked out the year I was born. Jenna greeted me with fake cheer. "Oh. David. We didn't expect you." I didn't answer. Tom appeared from the hallway, wearing a sweater over his shoulders like some Wall Street cliché. "Just in time," he said. "I wanted to talk to you about the property line." "The what?" "The north fence. We're planning to extend the back patio. Jenna wants an outdoor kitchen." Jenna nodded. "We're thinking marble counters. With a wine fridge." I looked at the hallway behind them. The place where Dad used to hang our school portraits. Now empty. "I just came to get my toolbox," I said, my voice flat. "Of course," Tom said. "It's all in the shed. But hey, while you're here, I wanted to let you know we've got a buyer interested in the side lot. It's not being used and we figured. That side lot's where Dad buried the dog." Tom laughed, then stopped when he saw I wasn't joking. "Oh. Well, we'll have it landscaped. Make it nice." Jenna chimed in, "We want the whole property to reflect our brand." Our brand. Like this was some lifestyle blog and not the home our father built with his own hands. I didn't say another word. Just walked out, took my toolbox, and left. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the plaque. Kept hearing our brand in her voice. Kept tasting the bitterness of every word I hadn't said. So I went to the drawer. The one I kept locked. Pulled out the sealed envelope Dad had handed me himself. "If anything ever gets strange," he'd said, "you keep this." I broke the seal. Inside, the original will. Dated, notarized, and witnessed. Leaving everything, house, land, savings, to me. The signature in his favorite pen. My name in every paragraph. No mention of Tom. The next morning, Tom sent me a photo. It was the dining room, newly remodeled. Light gray paint, modern chandelier. All traces of Mom's antique set gone. The caption read, "Progress. Progress." As if replacing memories with catalog furniture was something to celebrate. I stared at that message for a long time. Then opened a new tab. And typed in the name of a probate attorney. I didn't call the lawyer right away. The will sat on my kitchen table for 2 weeks, sealed again inside a new envelope. I couldn't bring myself to look at it. Not because I didn't believe what it said, but because of what it meant. It meant my father's last request had been rewritten. It meant my brother had lied to my face. It meant that after everything, I was still alone. I spent those days drifting. The kettle would boil and go cold. The TV stayed on but I didn't hear it. Mail piled up on the counter. Friends left voicemails I never returned. People said things like, "At least your brother's stepping up. You should be proud, he's keeping the family name alive. It's a big house anyway, right?" They didn't know the years I'd lived inside that house. The repairs I'd made. The conversations I'd had with walls no one else remembered. They didn't know I still woke up at 6 a.m. because that's when Dad needed his meds. That I still made 2 cups of coffee every morning. That I still paused before walking past his bedroom. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was hollow. I drove by the house once. Just once. They'd painted the shutters blue. The flower beds were gone. The marigolds replaced with low-maintenance gravel. The porch swing had been removed entirely. The curtains were closed. I sat in my truck across the street for 20 minutes, watching the lights flicker through the windows, imagining what they were doing inside. Probably hosting friends. Pouring wine. Showing off the new kitchen. And not one person inside would know who wired that house. Who bled for it. Who lost sleep over it. Who gave it his life. I went home, poured a glass of water, and stood at the sink until the sun went down. That night I opened the envelope again. Held the will in my hands. I read every line. Every clause. Every carefully chosen word. Dad had made it clear. To my son, David Harrison, who stood beside me when I couldn't stand alone. He'd seen me. Even if no one else did. Even if Tom tried to erase it. I folded the document, slid it back into its envelope, and set it down. Then I stared at it a long time. Not in anger. Not in revenge. Just with a single, quiet realization. He trusted me to protect what mattered. It was a Wednesday morning when I called the lawyer. A small office, not downtown. Not flashy. Just a firm that had been around long enough to understand what people really meant when they said, "It's not about the money." I spoke to a woman named Caroline. Her voice was calm. Measured. The kind of voice you trusted to read the fine print when everyone else just skimmed. "I have a will," I told her. The original. My father's. The one before everything changed. "Do you have a copy of the new one?" she asked. "I've seen it," I said. It came with a handshake and a plaque screwed into the siding. She didn't laugh. Just said, "Come in." I sat across from her that Friday, sliding the envelope across her desk. She opened it with care. Scanned it. Paused on certain lines. "Dated 6 months before the new one," she said. "Not revoked. Witnessed properly. And notarized." I nodded. She flipped to the final page, reading the signature like it meant something more than ink. "He trusted you," she said quietly. I didn't respond. Then she looked up. "Do you want to contest it?" The room went still. Not because I hadn't considered it, but because I knew the real question she was asking. "Do you want to fight them?" And my answer surprised me. "No," I said. "I want to reclaim what's mine. Not with noise. Just, with truth." She studied me for a long moment. Then nodded once. "Okay," she said. "Then let's begin." The process wasn't fast. Or dramatic. It was paperwork. Research. Quiet letters sent with certified tracking numbers. Tom didn't respond at first. Neither did Jenna. Then came the call. His voice was clipped. Tired. "You've got some nerve, dragging lawyers into this." "I didn't rewrite Dad's will," I said. "You didn't take care of him either," he snapped. That stopped me. "I was here every day." "You were stuck," he said, like it was obvious. "I was out building something." "On whose back?" I asked. Silence. Then, you're not going to win, David. No one cares about some dusty piece of paper. I almost smiled. That dusty piece of paper has your name missing from it, Tom. And I hung up. Caroline filed the petition in probate court. She didn't promise me outcomes. Just laid out the path. Meanwhile, I got quiet. Stopped responding to texts. Stopped checking social media. Stopped talking to people who asked, what's going on with the house? Instead, I started walking. Every morning before sunrise. Through old neighborhoods. Past the diner Dad loved. Past the school where I'd taught shop class before coming home for what I thought would be a season. I remembered who I was before I became the man who fixed everyone else's problems. And in the quiet, I found something I didn't expect. Peace. Then came the email. Tom's attorney. A proposal, informal mediation before public proceedings. In the interest of preserving family legacy. Caroline looked at it and shrugged. Translation? I asked. They're scared, she said. Of what? Of exposure. I nodded. And agreed to the meeting. The turning point wasn't the decision to fight. It was the realization I no longer needed to win by anyone else's definition. The house. The land. The name. Those were details. But the truth? That was mine. And I wasn't letting it go. The mediation was held in a neutral office suite, one of those glass front buildings where every hallway smells like toner and coffee that's been sitting too long. Tom arrived in a designer jacket, gold watch flashing whenever he gestured. Jenna was with him, her heels clicking sharply against the tile. I wore the same jacket I'd worn to Dad's memorial. No lawyer with me. Just Caroline. She brought a single folder. Tom had a briefcase full of papers. He didn't open it once. We sat across from each other in a conference room. A mediator, middle-aged, polite, useless, asked us to speak respectfully. Tom did most of the talking. Dad told me he wanted the estate streamlined. He said David wasn't equipped to manage it. He was confused near the end. Then Caroline slid the original will across the table. Confused? She asked. He signed this 6 months before he passed. Clear-headed. Detailed. Notarized. Tom glanced at it and said, that's outdated. Circumstances changed. I looked at him then, not with anger, but with something colder. Pity. You changed, I said. Not him. Jenna shifted uncomfortably. The mediator said we could propose a private settlement. Tom cleared his throat. We'd be willing to offer David a share of the estate. To avoid dragging the family name through court. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out something else. A printout. A simple list. Dates. Payments. Repairs. Every invoice I'd paid out of pocket over 17 years. Every dollar I spent on the house. Every medical bill I handled. Every prescription pickup. Every grocery run. Every oil change for Dad's car. $84,632. Not counting time. Not counting holidays missed. Not counting the 20 Christmas mornings I spent alone while Tom sent holiday texts from Cabo. Caroline placed the document beside the will. If Mr. Harrison insists on contesting, we'll be adding a claim for financial reimbursement. Tom stared at the numbers. Then at me. You were never supposed to keep score, he said. I didn't, I said softly. Until you made me. I didn't take their offer. We let the process play out. And quietly, things began to shift. Vendors started calling me again. The local flower shop that had worked with Dad for decades. The bakery that always got our Thanksgiving pies right. The electrician I'd recommended years ago, who stopped returning Tom's calls after hearing what happened. Not out of loyalty. Out of memory. They remembered who showed up. Who paid on time. Who cared. Tom's plans stalled. The patio construction halted when the permit hit a zoning snag, thanks to a quiet email I'd sent to the city archives, reminding them the lot line hadn't been updated in 22 years. The neighborhood association started asking questions about the renovations, why the historic siding had been replaced, why the porch swing had vanished, why the new landscaping blocked the sidewalk. Little things. But they added up. Jenna posted a photo of the house one evening with the caption, "New beginnings." Within a day, the comments shifted. "Didn't David take care of your dad for years? He was the heart of that home." Funny how legacy gets rewritten. They deleted the post. Then their social media accounts disappeared altogether. Meanwhile, I hosted a small dinner. Just a few of Dad's old friends. The people who showed up after the funeral with casseroles and silent understanding. We sat in my rented apartment with folding chairs and paper plates. And it felt more like family than that remodeled house ever had. After dessert, one of them asked, "So what happens now?" I didn't have to think. "I'm going home," I said. The court date arrived 2 months later. But Tom didn't show. His attorney delivered a settlement. Everything in the original will reinstate it. The house. The land. The savings. No apology. Just signatures. I signed. Then walked out of the courthouse into spring air that felt cleaner than it had in years. I didn't post about it. Didn't send announcements. Just drove back to the house. And for the first time since Dad passed, I used my own key. The porch creaked under my feet. The shutters still needed repainting. The swing would need to be rebuilt. But it was home. And it was mine. The house was quiet again. Not the hollow kind of quiet from before, this was something else. A peace earned through distance. Through waiting. Through truth finally being louder than ego. I repainted the shutters myself. Forest green, the way they used to be. Took 2 weekends and 3 blistered fingers. I replaced the porch swing with a stronger one. Oak, like my father taught me to work with. It creaked like the old one. I sat there most mornings now, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise through the trees Dad planted the year I was born. I wasn't rebuilding the house. I was restoring it. Tom never called again. He didn't fight the ruling. Didn't ask for anything back. But the silence spoke more than words ever could. I heard from someone at the bank that he and Jenna had tried to refinance their condo and hit resistance. Something about the court case showing up on asset records. Rumors circled. Nothing official. But people talk. Especially when those people once bragged about inheritance on golf courses and dinner parties. His name wasn't on the property anymore. His plans, quietly folded. His brand, forgotten. I didn't rub it in. Didn't need to. Some things fall apart all on their own when they're built on theft. A few months later, I ran into Jenna at the grocery store. Alone. Hair pulled back. No ring. She spotted me in the baking aisle and froze. Her cart had one of those squeaky wheels that made it impossible to slip away unnoticed. I gave a small nod. She opened her mouth, maybe to say something. An apology. An explanation. I'll never know. I just moved past her and said, quietly, "Take care." Not bitter. Not smug. Just final. She didn't follow me. I opened Dad's study again. First time in almost a year. The air inside was stale but sacred. His books. His clock. The dent in the desk from where he dropped the wrench that one winter. I found the shoebox full of his letters, things he wrote but never mailed. Mostly to Mom. But one envelope was addressed to me. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a single line. Some people build legacy with money. Others build it with time. I see yours. I folded the note and placed it in the desk drawer. I didn't cry. I just sat with it. And let the silence speak. The neighborhood noticed. People waved again. A few dropped by with baked goods. One brought a tool set, just in case you're still the guy fixing everyone's stuff. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no. The garden started to bloom again. Marigolds first. Then lilacs. Then peace. It wasn't planned. I didn't expect to see him there, not at the town hall meeting, not months after the court ruled. But there he was. Tom. Standing in line for coffee, wearing a blazer that looked a little more lived-in than usual. He caught sight of me, and for a moment, I saw the flicker in his eyes, debating whether to turn and walk out. But he didn't. He nodded. Half a gesture. Then took a slow step toward me. David, he said. I said nothing. He cleared his throat. Didn't expect to see you here. I raised an eyebrow. You're still involved with local development? He shook his head. Not really. Just showing face. Trying to rebuild some connections. That word, rebuild, landed hard. I said nothing. He looked down at his coffee. Listen. About everything that happened. Here it was. The moment. The one he'd avoided with contracts and lawyers and silence. I didn't think it would go that far, he said. I thought maybe you'd take a settlement. That we'd split it. Move on. I looked at him, fully now. No anger in me. No vengeance. Just something deeper. You didn't think I'd stand up for what Dad gave me, I said. He flinched, barely. You thought because I was quiet, I was weak. He started to interrupt, but I lifted a hand. You always talked about legacy, I said. About building something. But you skipped the hard part, honoring it. He swallowed hard. I was trying to protect what he built, he offered, weakly. No, I said calmly. You were trying to own it. A pause. Then I stepped closer, just enough to make sure he heard me, but not loud enough for anyone else to. He gave that house to me. Because I earned it. Not because I asked. Tom nodded slowly. I see that now. I studied his face. He looked tired. Thinner. Like the cost had landed on him, long after the final court date. Then don't say anything else, I said quietly. Just leave it alone. He nodded once. I will. Then, like he'd aged 10 years in 2 minutes, he turned and walked away. Not angry. Not defiant. Just, done. And for the first time since this all began, I felt nothing toward him. Not hate. Not pity. Just, freedom. I stepped out into the late afternoon light. The air smelled like spring rain and cut grass. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The past was behind me. And it finally knew it. The days got quieter. But they didn't feel empty anymore. I started my mornings on the porch swing, coffee in hand, same time Dad used to read the paper. The birds came back that spring, cardinals, mostly, and I learned to recognize their calls without needing an app or a book. I planted marigolds again. Not out of ritual, but because I finally wanted to. They bloomed fast this year. I took a part-time job at the hardware store downtown. Nothing big, just a few days a week helping people find screws and lumber and lawn feed. It felt good. To be useful. To be steady. To not be the guy who got screwed by his brother, but just David. People came in and asked how the house was doing. I'd smile and say, solid. Because it was. So was I. The study became something else. Not a shrine, not a frozen room, but a place to sit. To think. To remember without pain. Dad's letter stayed in the desk. His old chess board came back out. Sometimes I play both sides. It's slower, but peaceful. I don't check on Tom. Not because I don't care, but because I finally don't need to. His chapter in this story is done. Mine isn't. Some evenings, I walk the fence line. The one I fixed a dozen times over the years. Now it holds stronger than ever. Probably because this time, I built it for myself, not to prove anything. Not to hold someone else's dream together. Just to mark something real. Something that lasted. They took the papers. They changed the locks. They tried to write me out. But legacy doesn't live in ink. It lives in time. In hands. In sacrifice. And some names. They stay on the house. Even after the plaque comes down.